Rich Haitian by Mach-Hommy is probably the album of the year, end quote. It has probably even dethroned Schoolboy Q as being the best rap album of the year, and I'm going to talk about that. I'm going to talk about the top-level rhymes, the top-level beats, all of it. I'm even going to break down like just 2 words that I think, if you follow me along, I think they will absolutely blow your mind the way they blew my mind. So I want to take you on a little journey here about how I have come to understand Mach-Hommy. Or perhaps the better word to use is comprehend. And what I think I'm starting to comprehend is that maybe we shouldn't be trying to comprehend Mach-Hommy. Now, this is not a sort of typical conversation I might have at the beginning of a video, talk about how I'm not of the culture, I'm an observer, I'm a white guy, and whether or not someone with my life experience and all the history implied within it should be discussing someone with his life experience and all the history within it. That's a very valid argument, but that's not the one that I'm making. I'm not discussing right now, should I talk about Mach-Hommy? Should I try to comprehend Mach-Hommy? But is it not possible that we shouldn't? I don't know how long this video is going to be. I don't edit. I don't have a script. I just have notes. It's probably going to be an hour. That's how much I like to talk about it. But maybe you should just skip it. Maybe we need to just think about Mach-Hommy differently. He's not someone to be deciphered. Maybe he's not a mystery to be solved, but someone whose substance is opaque. And we should not be trying to make that more clear. I don't know his real name. I'm sure I could find it if I looked on the internet, but it's very hard to find. Don't tell me in the comments. I will delete any comment that says his real name, okay? I don't know his age. I assume he's in his late 30s, but I don't know. He could be in his 60s for all I know, because you don't ever see his face. His face is constantly covered by a mask. His hair is constantly covered by a hat, and we don't even have his language. He raps in English, but he'll sometimes switch into French, which I can understand, and then he'll sometimes switch in to Creole, which I sort of understand sometimes, but then that doesn't really matter, because the most important thing when you're trying to study Mach-Hommy, when you love Mach-Hommy, is knowing he will never let you have the words, ever. You cannot get his words. Okay, I know there's secret listservs, I assume, I don't know, I've heard. There's people who trade the lyrics back and forth like they're on the dark web, okay? Like you have to go on the dark web to find his lyrics, because he will take down your lyrics anytime. He will use the full extent of the law to take his lyrics off of your paper. He is fighting for opacity, which is the opposite of transparency. He is fighting for opacity in specifically a time that demands transparency. We need to know everything all the time. We need to know where we are. We need to know what we're doing. We need to know everything. But this goes deeper than just sort of 2024 phones bad conversation. This goes to a general need that our entire society and our entire culture has had going back centuries and centuries and centuries for transparency. I want to approach Mach-Hommy in this video as someone who's fighting for the right of opacity. And in so doing, I am making reference, and if you're a scholar of great Caribbean mind, thought leaders, or great thinkers of the Negritude movement, you'll probably know I'm talking about Edouard Glissant. Edouard Glissant, okay? Edward Glissant, if you want to pronounce it like that, okay? Now, he's not from Haiti, he's not from Haiti, he's from Martinique, but still the French Caribbean, and he is the person who came up with this whole concept of the right to opacity, and not in this book. I'll tell you where he talks about it. Well, this is a great book with discussing the theme of creolité, which I'll probably get to at a different Mach-Hommy video down the line. Thank you for auditing the Always Positive New Music Review Show, hosted by a French professor who discovered Edouard Glissant randomly. Not quite randomly, but sort of randomly. You see, I was reviewing that Childish Gambino album, Atavista. And I knew that the word atavism was kind of like a big word. You need a dictionary to look it up, referring to sort of ancestral things in the past. And I just happened to type in atavism philosophy. And what was the first name that popped up but Edouard Glissant? So I'm there, I'm like, I read a book of his called La Case du Commandeur, the Commander's Shack. I read that in grad school. I enjoyed it. Hard to follow, but a very good book. And I was like, well, let's just look up. Let's just see what's on YouTube. Maybe this will help me better explain Childish Gambino. And what I discovered was something much better, something that will help me to better understand why it's important not to comprehend Mach-Hommy, or the importance of non-comprehension. I happened to stumble on a video, I'll include a link in the description, from like a graduate student conference from Columbia in like 2014. A guy named Kevin Potter. I tracked him down. He's teaching in maybe Austria now. So I just sent him a letter and said thanks, and he responded. So it's very cool, you know. And he does a great summary in this whole description where he talks, in this whole lecture that he gives, where he talks about opacity, and in particular, the opposition of opacity and comprehension. He correctly underlines the fact that the translator, who translated the entire article into English, a woman named Betsy Wing, emphasizes this. In English, we have a couple words. We have understand and we have comprehend. In French, they really only use comprendre, okay, which is to comprehend. Have you ever thought about the fact that comprehend and apprehend are very similar? They've got the same suffix. Have you ever thought about, if you've studied French or many other Romance languages, that prendre means to take? Comprehend means to seize, means to take. There is a violence in comprehension, especially if an artist is intentionally speaking or behaving in a way that defies comprehension. For us to try to comprehend is to perhaps exercise some kind of violence against their intention. That is why I think Mach-Hommy works so hard to keep his lyrics off of the internet. So I went down the rabbit hole. I will include a link also in the description of the full article by Edouard Glissant, the full treatise that he writes in English. It's available all over the internet, okay? It's called For Opacity. And it's all tied into these larger themes that he has that are all centered on the idea of the different way of looking at existence and life if you are descendant from people who were forced into the New World through slavery, in particular forced into the French Caribbean. He talks about the two great abysses. Gouffre, great word in French. The first abyss is that of the boat that you had to go into, and then the second abyss is the ocean. And especially if you're in the French Caribbean, you're surrounded by that abyss at all times. And he discusses how, in general, Western culture, dominant culture, is predicated, is based upon an idea of filiation, which is the idea that we are connected through genetics, through generations, to some mythical past, some definite progenitor, okay? So I am related to, I don't know, I think it was maybe Stephen Payne, who came over, I think on the Diligent, something like that, in like 1623, somewhere in Massachusetts, right? Super far back, right? And I can probably trace that back to England somewhere, and probably it goes back to Charlemagne. And in the Western faith, we all go back to Adam or Abraham or Noah, whatever, right? We all have these. I'm not a biblical scholar, as you can tell. My dad was a preacher, but I'm not a biblical scholar. Tells you something about my dad, but and me. But this idea that there's like a link, that we are all links in a chain that goes back and back and back and back in a reasonable, meaningful, centralized path. So what does it mean if you are cut from your past by that very same history that we are using to make things seem so rational and so clear? What does it mean if you were thrown into the first abyss of the boat and then thrown into the second abyss of the ocean and brought across, and you have that break? Part of what Glissant fights for is a sense of Creole identity. Creole is the term for mixing of cultures in the New World, usually because there are many different, when people were forced over here and they were forced into slavery, they were forced to do so while mixing together with tribes that did not speak the same language and did not know each other and did not have any connection. Like the best way to think about it is not a bunch of Africans were put in a boat and sent to another place. Think of it like a bunch of Earthlings were put in a spaceship and sent to Mars. So you're sitting there next to someone from Iceland and someone from Cambodia, and you're trying to figure out how do you make an understanding, how do you make some kind of identity out of the fact that we thought that we were different tribes, we thought we were different parts of Africa, we thought we were different cultures going back. Our affiliation goes back, but our affiliation has been cut. Our chain, ironically, has been cut as the chain has been put around our legs. I obviously mean I'm speaking from the perspective of the people who were forced into slavery, not myself. And that's the tragedy. But what Glissant tries to do is make something meaningful out of it. Try to say that maybe instead of this Western value of a kind of centralized, single, rational path, we need to think differently. We need to think, instead of a definite history, an atavistic history, that's where the term uses, we need to think relationally. So it's not so much that we go back to Charlemagne and we go back to Adam and we go back straight through the lines. It's more that as we move and as our culture grows, instead of thinking of it as one long straight line, think of it as a great confusion of influences. And in that great confusion of influences, we end up fighting against a lot of the values that are central to Western thought. Values like transparency, comprehension, clarity. Because how are you supposed to believe in rationality, simplicity, and clarity when your history is so violent and muddled? Let's not hear me talk anymore about it. Let me quote Edward Glissant from the text. Listen, it'll take you maybe 20 minutes to read the essay. It will haunt you for the rest of your life. So I challenge you, okay? I know you came here for a Mach-Hommy review, but also you came here for a Professor Skye review. My semester just ended. If I can get 1,000 people to think about Edward Glissant on a Wednesday, I'm a happy prof. So here's what Glissant says: if we examine the process of comprehending people and ideas from the perspective of Western thought, we discover that its basis is this requirement for transparency. In order to comprehend and thus accept, you have to measure your solidity within the ideal scale of providing me with grounds to make comparisons and perhaps judgments. I have to reduce. Any act of comprehension, any search for transparency, is a search to reduce to something clear and understandable that I can understand with my experience, and that is the only way that I will accept you. If I cannot comprehend, if I cannot seize you, if I cannot take your meaning, if I cannot make you clear to me, I will not accept you. That's the basis of the problem that is being discussed and trying to be solved by Edward Glissant here by praising opacity, the inability to see through. Opacities can coexist and converge. Weaving fabrics. To understand these, truly one must focus on the texture of the weave and not the nature of its components. Ladies and gentlemen, Edward Glissant, I don't think ever heard Mach-Hommy. I believe he would really enjoy his music, but I don't know. I think he died in, I don't know. He lived a pretty long time, but he died, I think, over a decade ago. I'll look it up. Doesn't matter. You can look it up. You tell me in the comments. Focus on the texture of the weave and not the nature of its components. He has now told you how to listen to Mach-Hommy, because and I'm going to do it. I'm going to break down a lot of these lyrics, and I do it, in the words of Orson Welles, under protest, but not really. I enjoy doing it. It's fun. I'm going to commit the violence of comprehension on this text, but still, the real joy of Mach-Hommy is in the texture of the weave, and maybe this is why I like rappers in this lane, in this sort of like aggressively complex, mixed together, sometimes I'll call it word salad. You know, why was I drawn so much to Ghostface Killah? Maybe that's the same reason. Because when I heard the lyrics, blood on his wall, he's like ketchup, I understood that I could have looked it up and figured out it's Clark Wallabies and blah, blah. But just like hearing these words and the way they go, like, let's not focus. Let's not focus all the time on the components. Let's not lyric genius this to death. Let's not Professor Skye this to death. Let's not get in there and break it apart. Let's just focus on the texture of the weave. He makes an important point, Glissant does. So I can't pronounce it any other way. I'm just going to call it's spelled glissant, Glissant. But the opaque is not the obscure, though it is possible for it to be so and accepted as such. It is that which cannot be reduced, which is the most perennial guarantee of participation and confluence. The thought of opacity distracts me from absolute truths, whose guardian I might believe myself to be. It's really important. This might be the biggest idea you have all day, and I don't blame you. This is grad school level thought. I'm not trying to be like pretentious or condescending. But yeah, I went to grad school, right? And these are the kinds of thoughts that you have you might not be there, and I'm not like criticizing you if you're not there because I'm not 100% sure that I'm there. I'm still working through these things, but somehow the connection of coercive systems of power, of slavery and domination and colonization being tied to the belief in absolute truths, and that fighting against colonialism and slavery and injustice, you have to fight against absolute truths and embrace confusion and opacity. That's a big thought, and I hope you're there with me. And if you're not, don't worry, I'm still going to discuss this dope album. Sadhu Gold's going nuts on this thing. So I'm going to do my best. I'm going to do my best to explain this album, to explain the weave. I do want to move on now, but I want to quote Potter, the academic who I saw talk about this, who said that we owe it to the poets of the French Caribbean to embrace the opaque, not try to offer the comfort of transparency and comprehension. And that's the thing. It's comfortable to understand. If I explain to you what he means by I'm an ibex on the hilly slopes, and I really break it down and I talk about the meaning of the word ibex and where the ibex are and what a hilly slope is and what that might do with this hunting, or maybe we just have those words bumping in our head. No, so the thing is, as much as Mach-Hommy is definitely opaque, there is constantly these themes of Haitian identity and trying to get us to think about and talk about Haiti. If you watched my review of Pray for Haiti a couple albums ago, well, like 10 albums ago, if you go by EPs, he is the dump god. I talked to you about what good sources to listen. Understanding Haitian history is the most important history you can understand. If you have to understand one country's history, United States is not important, England is not important, China is not important. If you really, obviously these are all important places. What I'm saying is, if you really want to understand where we are as a civilization, you cannot, I don't think, understand humanity if you haven't really done a deep dive into Haitian history. It is this mirror of the New World experience that shows us a lot of very uncomfortable truths about humanity and about our absolute anger, really, a fundamental anger at the abolition of slavery. Okay, but anyway, so go watch that video. I talk about C.L.R. James. I talk about this great book, The Aftershocks of History by Laurent Dubois. You should read it, But the most important thing is that right now, a whole bunch of stuff is happening after this book was made. Something probably worse than the earthquake is happening right now, or as bad as the earthquake, or just a different kind of bad as the earthquake. No need to compare such misery. The last president was assassinated. The current president is in exile. It's been like 7 years since an election. And literally, the country is literally being controlled by gangs, like actual gangs with automated weapons. Like everyone went to go see that Civil War movie. Oh, wow, what a fun, fantastic thing. I'm telling you, the history of Haiti and the history of America is the history of the New World. Every time something could go well and you could get a lucky break, that came to America. Every time something could go poorly and you could get an unlucky break, that happened to Haiti. On top of that, every time a country could be systematically supported, it was America. Every time it could be systematically suppressed and oppressed, it was Haiti. Really, it gives you a much better understanding of the world post-1492 if you're able to study both these countries at the same time. I will tell you, if you're sitting there and say, Skye, I can't read a book. I understand. Skye, I can't read 2 books. Okay, that's fine. Fortunately, in my research, I found a very good video by someone named Cogito. Descartes. a much bigger YouTuber than me, so I'm not like talking about like I'm not putting you up on game here. I'll include a link to that in the description as well. It's like a 46-minute video, and what he does that's really good is he talks about the history and he contextualizes the current problems, which is great, which is very useful. He breezes through a lot of things. He doesn't go into any kind of detail. The tension between the Toussaint and Dessalines. He doesn't go through the whole history of everything, right? But what he does is he really takes us to the modern time and explains and contextualizes the modern problems and the complicity of Western forces, especially France, and especially the United States. Unless you are as young as my 17-month-old baby, you have been alive. You have been alive when America has been actively, severely damaging this country, which was already, if not the poorest, one of the poorest countries in the world. We, Americans, you, should feel the call to action, or at least the call to understanding, or at least be aware of our complicity, our absolute complicity, our failure at every single stage to offer any kind of meaningful help to the people of Haiti. Not even help, but like brotherhood, because they're our brothers. The two countries that broke free of the colonial powers in the 18th century, and we need to be together, and we should have been together, but we weren't. And you know why, and I don't need to say it. It's sad, but the real richest Haitian is a guy named Biggio, and he bought a Maybach from Jeffrey Epstein. Okay? Just to give you a sort of sense of like the kind of, Oh, music? Oh, you wanted me to talk about music? Well, that's good, because this album is so good. This album is so good. At the end, I'm going to do a little unboxing. I'll show you the vinyl. His vinyl cost $200. $200 to buy his vinyl. I hadn't heard a single song, and I bought it instantly. That's how good he is. Why is he so good? Well, I feel like this opacity term is really unlocking something for me to understand him, his ability to make these weaves with words. But it's also his word choice. And when you do go and study what he's saying, when you do take a little bit of time and dig around and commit the violence of comprehension on him, you just say, how does he think of these things? Like, how did he get that thought in his head? Like, so many times, he'll just say something, and just the way he phrases it, or the way he thinks it. The only other rapper I think that's capable of, that makes me feel that way, I would say, is Billy Woods. But even then, like, it's a little bit more like, because Woods is still quite opaque, but not as opaque. I see the sort of reasoning and thoughts. So if he's making some kind of obscure reference, I sort of understand how it ties in, and I am able to understand the lyrics. And okay. And what makes this album so good is that if you're like me and you've been following Mach-Hommy, every project he does, I listen to and like with varying levels. But he is the dump god. He is the guy who releases like 5 EPs a year, a whole bunch of EPs, especially with God for Him. And it's really the cool thing that rap does, where there's like, okay, this is going to be the fine stuff, and then later is going to be the absolute awesome stuff. And you can tell because, like, even just in his verbal formations, he does a lot of like similes, I flip you like a dolphin on the TV show, or I'll flip you like a pancake at the International House of P. Like whatever it is he might say. I made those up, by the way. Please don't blame those bad lyrics on Mach-Hommy. And so it's cool because he's like a master of simile, but that's less interesting. It's way more interesting when he's that master of that dense weave. So part of what makes this album so good is the lyrics, and then the other part is the music. How well produced this album is. And I think it's interesting because of his big albums, sort of major albums, he tends to have sort of like one major producer. Not always. I mean, Pray for Haiti has many, but Haitian Body Odor was primarily Auguste Fanon, Balanchot was primarily Nicholas Craven, and here we have Sadhu Gold just everywhere. And it's It's not a coming out party because he's been amazing for years and years and years, and if you see his name in the credits, you know it's going to be a good beat. But it seems like he kicks it into another gear here, and that's such a cheesy term, but that's what I mean. Okay. And the other thing is, this album is different than the streaming. I'm going to be reviewing the streaming version, not this. Maybe I'll do a thing like for my Patreons where I'll like describe the differences between the albums. But let's get into the album. Let's talk about it. If you like this video, smash the like bucket, subscribe. I got 100,000 subscribers right now. Thank you. That's wild. I owe a lot of this to Mach-Hommy. If you put in the letters AVAA, that stands for awesome video as always, and I will always heart that comment. I'm going to do a stamp, and my stamp is the first track. Ellipses. So it's just parentheses with ellipses in the middle. This is that song that's going to blow your mind. Now, he's rapping in Creole. He's singing in Creole. There's this longing feeling. This is produced by Fanon. And Olohun is how he starts. I think he's saying in the lobby. I don't know. I think that's what that is in Creole. I don't know. I'm able to follow along enough because of my knowledge of French. He says, no haute couture, no high fashion, no belle voiture, no beautiful car. It's this great mournful sound with this great searching guitar and a certain point in a flute. And then we get to the two words. The two words. SONJE, BÉCASSE. There's a track on the album called SONJE, or SONJE, S-O-N-J-E. Because I know French, I'm going to take you on my path to understanding what this word means, what these words mean. I was like, oh, songe, that means like to think in French, songer. So I thought, okay, this is like think about Bécasse. And Bécasse sounded somewhat familiar to me. I was like, was there like a battle, like is that like a town in Haiti, in Haiti? And so I looked it up. I just looked up Bécasse. Again, because I speak French, I know how to spell it just from hearing it. And I discover it's a little bird. It's like a little tiny little gamey bird called a woodcock. Now, that's making you snicker and bad on you for laughing at the fact there's a bird called a woodcock. There's also a tufted titmouse. I don't know what to tell you. So I'm thinking, okay, like a little bird. I'm like, oh, well, maybe this is like, often birds can be involved in voodoo rituals, so maybe it's that. And so I'm just thinking this little bird and it can be cooked. So I don't know. So I just look it up. I just type in Bécasse, Haiti. I discover on Wikipedia a bird called Scolopax brachycarpa. You can't see that bird. That is a kind of woodcock that only existed in Haiti. It was a species that existed in Haiti, but then, throughout the centuries, European settlers came to Haiti, brought their animals, and those animals hunted the woodcock to extinction. I'm not going to lie. I think a lot about Haiti. I think a lot about the pain of the people there. I think of them as human beings, not as victims. I think of them as people who have favorite teachers and colors and foods and love their parents and their kids. And I think about the level of suffering and pain that they've existed in my entire lifetime. And then I'm thinking about this image of this bird that has gone extinct for no other reason. It was just sitting there, and then all of a sudden all these cats come around and they start getting eaten by all these European cats. I wept. I did. I cried, and I don't really understand. I mean, maybe it was just because I was just moved. Maybe it's because I was with my daughter. I don't know what it was. But I wasn't done. Already your mind should be blown by the fact that a bécasse is a kind of bird that existed in Haiti but was pushed to extinction by European invaders. What if I told you there's a ship called the USS Woodcock? Now, it was a minesweeper in World War I. Isn't that great? But that's not the end of the story. I'm going to read to you one of the craziest, most stilted, imperialist Wikipedia articles I have ever seen. It makes sense. It's taken directly from Naval History and Heritage Command.mil. But here's a description of the USS Woodcock. Outside yearly return voyages to a Navy yard in the United States, such as that as Charleston, South Carolina, for repairs and alteration, Woodcock remained in Haitian waters, based on Port-au-Prince through the spring of 1934. That summer, when Roosevelt decided to pull the Marine Corps occupation force, a veritable fixture in Haitian history since August 1916, Woodcock took part in that important troop lift. On 15th August 1934, amidst impressive shoreside ceremonies and, quote, most friendly feelings displayed by the populace, Woodcock transported 79 officers and 747 enlisted men of the 1st Marine Brigade, the last of the occupation troops, and eventually took them back to the United States, thus closing a colorful chapter in U.S. Marine Corps history. A colorful chapter in U.S. Marine Corps history. If you edit Wikipedia, if you have that ability, I want you to go in there and erase that sentence or nuance it and saying colorful chapter in Marine Corps history perceived of as a tragedy by many, because the U.S. occupation of Haiti was a crime. It was a crime. We were not doing it to help. We were doing it to exploit, to make sure that they could plant banana plants where there were not banana plants before, so that Dole would have bananas. We did it so that we could suppress the people, so that we could practice dropping bombs. If you read a book like this and you go into the history, you understand that they were not, how is it referred to? Most friendly feelings displayed by the populace? No, there were freedom fighters called the Cacos who fought against the Marines. Figures like Charles Perrault, who was martyred in the cause. Remember Bécasse. Remember the woodcock that went extinct because of European invaders, and remember the ship that sat docked in your capital, ensuring that your people would be put underneath the thumb of an invader who is claiming to be your ally. That is the Bécasse. That is what he wants us to remember. And that is the violence of comprehension that I am committing. Because now we understand. Listen, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I heard the word wrong. Maybe this is a crazy coincidence that all these things happen to be. I don't think so. This is one of those examples. What the hell? How do you think? How do you think on this level? Now, I don't know. I've taught some Haitians. You know, like I've had Haitian students, and been very appreciative of the fact that I teach about Haiti and all that. But you know, I'm not on like I don't converse daily with people from Haiti. I can't just call up, Rosie, one of my former students, and be like, hey, yeah, so, does everyone talk about the Bécasse in Haiti? But it is an important thing to understand that from the Haitians that I know and from what I know of the history and the culture, their knowledge of history is so much higher than most other countries. Because history is the way that they can understand how they got to where they are, how they got to be in such a desperate situation while remaining so proud and so strong at the same time. It's a very complex history, and I think this is part of what makes his work so interesting, is his attachment and understanding of history and the way that he presents it, and then we'll pepper in some high-level discourse. And again, I don't know if he... I imagine he's read Blisson based on other stuff that he's very clearly read. But he's able to do all of it at once. He's able to be sort of a person on the street describing these problems while at the same time call back to these much higher ideas. It's nuts. It's nuts. It's such a good album. And that's just track one. 33 minutes in, and that's track one. I got some angry people emailing me, like messaging me saying, Skye, why aren't you reviewing this album? Are you just banning him because he said some stuff that made it seem like he's in the manosphere? You got to give me time to cook. I'm still not sure that these biscuits are ready to come out of the oven, but I just, I got to move on at some point. I'll get to more details of this album when I get to my year-end review, when this is probably going to be the album of the year. Okay, next track is Antonomasia, produced by Sadhu Gold. And antonomasia is the substitution of an epithet for a proper name. I assume that's talking about how Mach-Hommy has replaced his actual name. More gentle guitar and then horns pushing in, and then a full beat change. This album is full of little tiny beat changes and drums coming in, and then his opening lyrics, just that weave. I'm not going to explain these things to you. Let's just enjoy these words as they're said by somebody who doesn't have the timbre? What's the word? Timbre. I think timbre. I think it's the French pronunciation of a word that can be pronounced in English. The tone of his voice. Preferred sobriquet slime. I'll show you mine. You gonna be all the way blind. Vagabond nose in the bolognese wine. Triceratops hoping I'ma stay calm. Erupting like Yellowstone. I'm a showboater. I've got a great mind. And then ooh wee in the background. And the drums come in. This crazy sample. And then he drops the line, I'm Howard Thurman, you Martin Luther King. Oh my God. Is he gonna make me do more? Okay, this is fascinating. Okay. I'm going to ask you a question. Who's responsible for Martin Luther King's nonviolence? Like, who's probably the most influential person on Martin Luther King? If you're like me, you're going to say, well, he was inspired by Gandhi. No, Howard Thurman. Howard Thurman was a preacher, a civil rights activist, a mystic. He wrote a book which... I don't have with me, unfortunately, but called Jesus and the Disenfranchised. Point is, it's a book about the relationship between Jesus and people who have been put down by society. And Thurman is this really interesting character because he's sort of lost to history. I mean, not really. If you study African-American history, you are able to, you know who he is. If you study Martin Luther King, you know who he is. But still, he is this sort of real source. And so by saying this, Mach-Hommy is essentially saying that, you are the public face, the one that everybody knows, but I am like the real person in the background who is providing the actual basis of this. Like I am the real source of this. It's also worth mentioning Thurman was really well known for his mysticism. Even though he was like a preacher, he had this very sort of personal, almost like mystical view of religion and spirituality, which I think ties pretty well into Mach-Hommy. I think that's a sort of bubbling sub-theme throughout this album and perhaps throughout his entire work, the importance of mysticism, which makes sense because the Creole religion of voodoo, which is such a huge part of Haitian culture and faith. It's not just faith, it's culture as well. I think that is all throughout his music. Obviously it is. Hey, he talks about Darth Vader and Luke Skywalker. I'm a Star Wars guy. I don't know why, but that's okay. Rock Marciano comes on here, and it's a goat off. It's awesome, just two of the greatest underground rappers. Just the back and forth between them is really sweet with this cool weird sample and this laughing horror voice. Rock Marciano is just great with these horror voices. And then we get to the song Political featuring Drea Deneur, who does a lot of singing throughout this album. It's great. Usually if there's like a female singer all over a rap album, I'm not a big fan of it, but I love it here. Another Sadu Gold production, this great sci-fi sound. Woo woo! More guitar and drums and two chords. Does he say drop Wi-Fi on the citizens of Gaza? What does that mean? I'm not, nope. Appreciate the weave. I'm going to appreciate the weave. Because dropping Wi-Fi on the citizens of Gaza, because obviously the citizens of Gaza don't have Wi-Fi at the moment. They probably didn't have Wi-Fi before. If they did, it was heavily compromised and probably choked and observed by outside force. Jesus Christ. All the possible meanings. How do you think of that? And also, is that even what he said? Not only do I not know, I won't know. This is true. When I was growing up, I listened to the Rolling Stones all the time. There are songs that I did not know what they said. I just didn't know. It was just, and there was nowhere to go. There was no lyric book. There was no song book. My brothers and I would just say, I don't know. The chorus, International Monetary Flows, got a monkey on my back and it's a rather heavy load. It's funny because my son went to college right next to the International Monetary Fund. Like, I would park and there were security guards staring at my car, making sure that I wasn't going to, Oklahoma. You know what I mean? This is very weird. I've been thinking a lot about the International Monetary Fund, which is a very ambiguous, to put it kindly, organization that often imposes austerity and makes a lot of loans of it's a very complicated history between the IMF and Haiti. I entreat you to look it up, but it's not a pretty one. In general, Haiti's been forced throughout its entire life to pay for debts it can't possibly pay, and the reason it can't pay the debts is because of the heritage of slavery and institutional transnational racism. But it's this beautiful sing-songy chorus that is taking straight shots at the International Monetary Fund. And then just the way how he says these things. Swerving in my town. Why does he pronounce it like swerving? Because he's talking about being in New Jersey, and maybe he's trying to like a New Jersey accent. Swerving in my town, Jersey bound, Port-au-Prince, New Orleans style, about to murder my child. And then right after he says murder my child, I swear to God, Jack Black gets on here and just goes, you-do-do-do-do-do-do. It's like a little weird Jack Black thing, and then goes, you-do-do-do-do-do-do. Like right after I murder my child, you-do-do-do-do-do. Put that on the. Well, there's a Twitter page, Professor Skye, out of context. Murder my child. Look, if God saved Isaac, then what am I about? So it's all about, Abraham and Isaac, and about to kill him, and God says you have to kill your son, and so he goes out and says, God, you must be putting me on, and but then he does it, and then in the moment it's replaced by a sheep, right? Sheep or goat, replaced by some kind of a furry thing that eats grass. I don't know. Is this a Kierkegaard reference? Fear and Trembling, if you never read it, great text. It's a lot of it's about the leap of faith that was required in order to try to kill your own son, and that God proving his greatness, and all about like how to be a stranger in the land of promise. I'm not quite sure. How does that tie in? How does that tie into the International Monetary Fund and killing your child? Why is there so many themes of killing your children? I'm not going to answer that for you. I'm just going to respect the weave. I'm just going to respect this weave because I don't fully understand it. I feel it. I feel like the loss and the pain at the mistreatment and the death and the murder that's all around. And then the singer comes in and she's singing about all the pain we've been through. This emotional weight is a little bit resolved. Then we get to the song SONJE or SONJE, jazzy piano that's this loop that gets really cut off. Just a totally crazy beat. It's like low sub bass and like sparse piano and like this hard drum beat. It keeps changing. There's like 3 different changes to this beat. I don't know how many songs are in one, and I think I've never heard anything produced like this before. I don't think I've ever heard a rap song like this before. I've heard things like it, but I don't think I've heard anything do exactly what this song does in terms of the way that it sounds. Now it's produced by what's the name here? Hefziba. Okay, so that's pretty impressive as far as a producer whose name I can't even really pronounce. I don't have my reading glasses on, so you can't blame me. It's not the fact that they have a difficult name. And then just the way that he's rapping here has like more space to it because he has different levels of like the weave of his words can get looser from times, and it's a little bit looser here. He says, "We the closers." I assume that's a reference to Glengarry Glen Ross. Never seen it. Great movie. And then he says, "In the immortal words of Fela," and then he says something I cannot understand. I listened to it at 0.25, at 0.50 on YouTube. I can't get to what he's saying because it sounds like it's in Creole. Maybe it's not. Maybe it's in an African language because Fela Kuti is from Nigeria. So maybe it's in, is it Yoruba? Dear God, tell me it's Yoruba. I believe Yoruba would be the language that Fela Kuti spoke besides English. Please tell me in the comments if I'm wrong. I think I'm right, though. I'll ask my son. He's going to wake up soon. Dad! But I don't know. So I just looked up some quotes from Fela Kuti, the great musician. "The secret of life is to have no fear. I hold death in my pouch. I cannot die. To be spiritual is not by praying and going to church. Spiritualism is the understanding of the universe so that it can be a better place to live in." And then Mach-Hommy says, "I touch the granite with my palm." that's what I'm talking about. Like, his, like, I understand I went through the whole SONJE BÉCASSE thing, and I hopefully blew your mind the way my mind was blown. If I didn't blow your mind, it's because your mind's broken, dude. Like, just Jesus Christ, it's just crazy. It's crazy good. But this line, touch the granite with my palm, like, just those word choices. Like, granite, not the street, not the surface, not my hand. What does he mean by it? It's this grounding image. I touch the granite with my palm. It's such a beautiful assemblage of words and just put together, and you get the feeling, and you see him. You see the liner notes. Maybe that's what it's in reference to. Yeah, that's him at the Citadel, La Ferrière. I'll discuss that at the end of the video. Beta, anyone claiming alpha is a fresh omega. More manosphere talk, but at least he's making fun of it here. This whole chorus, if you say something, say it with your chest. And then in the post-chorus, the bass takes over. The bass just goes super crazy, and now all of a sudden, all that space in the weave, where it got a little bit looser, tightens up. And just no chill at all for this whole verse. I believe he says back in the act, and back of the act referencing Big Punisher, secretly probably one of the top 10 MCs of all time. I believe he said capacitance. It is just an amazing rhyme run that just defies comprehension. If I were to try to write out every single lyric here, it would literally take me an hour. Like, it's just because the words are so packed together, and he allows them to go together and fade apart, and just they're not like a single thought. I don't think anyone else can rap like this. I've compared him to a lot of other rappers, but I don't think anyone else can do this. I just don't think they can. I don't think anyone else can do what Mach-Hommy does, especially here. I believe he rhymes Emoko with Boko. Nice outro and the singer again. Then we get to the track Pardon, featuring the god Fahim. I was like, that's probably Haitian Creole for pardon, which means excuse me or sorry. And then I looked at the vinyl, and the vinyl, it's just called Pardon. There's different titles as well. This is nice because this is a dump song. So it's produced by, I can't tell if it's produced by Sadu Gold or Fortes. Or Fortes. There's too many different ways of pronouncing it. Fortes. I'm going to go with Fort because that's the way I would pronounce it in French. Fort. Or Sadu Gold. I can't figure out. It says different things on the vinyl and on title. But this is basically a Dump God song. It's with the god Fahim. I love hearing him. I love him in general, but usually when I hear him, I just want to hear Mach-Hommy because he usually splits the project, and I just want more Mach. That's not his fault. I like him. And it's nice kind of piano sample, takes over, it even kind of like inverts on itself. And this is maybe a step down on the album, but it goes from a 10 to an 8. Then we get to Empty Spaces, produced by Sadu Gold. Again, and this starts off with what sounds like some kind of ritual. Way-oh, 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 this little percussion. And for some reason, my 17-month-old baby, even though she generally likes songs that she can dance to, she goes nuts for the song. She makes me restart the song over and over again. Despite the fact she doesn't really speak at all, she sings along to the song. And she goes, wee-yow, 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 wee-yow. It's great. Cool, kind of like 60s soul sample, kind of a soundtrack feel. There's like no real drums. The bass is providing the percussion. The strings kind of reset. This is that line. Thought he was a billy goat. Mach-Hommy is the ibex sitting on some hilly slopes. Billy goat, hilly slopes. Are you by yourself right now? I don't care if you are. I don't care where you are. I want you to say those words next to each other just for the joy of the language. Billy goat, hilly slopes. Can you say billy goat, hilly slopes? You can. Keep my loins girded because you is genitalia. Let the crackers have it, you a hot dog. A lot of interesting talk about sort of white exploitation on this album, which makes sense. It's an important theme. But then it's not like Ural Droog isn't on here. He is. Question, is Ural Droog the most New York City rapper there's ever been? I know that I'm not saying he's the best rapper ever from New York City, but he exudes, to me, the most New York-y New York feel. Probably because he referenced the Van Wyck Expressway, which I've been on. And driving through New York is so bad. So hard. Especially if you're on Waze. Like if you're on Waze and you're on like the Cross Bronx Expressway and you're like underneath another street, then Waze is like, oh, you're up there. And it's like telling you to turn right and you're going like 60 miles per hour and you're being tailgated by like an Audi with one of those weird little bumper bullies. And you're listening to Hot 97 because you're in New York City and you're like, God damn it, another commercial for a car loan. Oh, maybe that'll be a good song. Oh no, it's another Drake song. It's another Drake song. And then you're driving, you're trying to figure out where you are. Anyways, he does rhyme juju and voodoo, which I don't know. I'm very uncomfortable with people who do not practice voodoo, who do not believe in voodoo, using the term voodoo in a light way. It's a religion, and we don't just like invoke other religions very often in a sort of joking way. But anyways, they have the dog in them, but it's a poodle. They have the dog in them, but it's another dog. R-wording them on two legs, Homo sapien. What? I just love it. Can't F with this Ukrainian, no matter what lane he in. This Ural Droog is great. I think Ural Droog and Mach are a great pairing just because of just how outlandish they are with language. Then we get to my favorite track on the album, Sur le pont d'Avignon, l'on y danse, l'on y danse. Préparation 1, produced by Conductor Williams. Conductor Williams is one of my favorite producers. Between this and his joints on the Conway the Machine album, he is just on a run here. It's this warbled sample, but listen to the song in the car. Go out right now, stop the video, go into a car and listen to the song if you have a car. If not, just put your headphones back in and turn it up. The way that he brings in a bass, a buzzy ass bass, to match Mach-Hommy's voice when Mach-Hommy is singing these French lyrics. Sur le pont d'Avignon, l'on y danse, sur le pont d'Avignon, l'on y danse tout en rond. That sound is like that's the most satisfying sound of 2024. That bass sound and that voice singing that song. Do you know what that song is? That song is like London Bridge is falling down. It's a song that every kid who speaks French or learns French as a kid sings. It's just a silly song about a bridge in the town of Avignon where there used to be a second pope. Long story. In the south of France. Nice place. I've been there. I was actually near the Pont d'Avignon with a bunch of other Americans, and they were all singing the song, and I thought it was lame. So I just went and lied down on the grass, and then this poser dude who was way more handsome than I was like, that's cool, bro. And he lies down on the grass, and all the girls in the in the group were like, wow, he's so deep and cool. I was like, me? No, him. Dude made it look like I was biting his style. Point is, it's a song that indicates French culture. It's a song which is very tied into colonial imperial instruction. Why would you need to learn about a bridge in Avignon if you are in Port-au-Prince? Why do you need to learn the rivers of France when you're in Algeria? Camus asks us in his great short story, L'Hôte. Why are these things taught? Why does he know these lyrics? Why does he know them? Because of imperialism and colonialism and domination. It also happens to be a cool melody. Happens to be a song from, I believe, the 15th century. Just a little song that you sing and do a little couples dance and bow to each other. It's a very fun, little silly song, but it has this deeper meaning when it's sung by somebody who would be oppressed in the name of the people who sing that song. This might be my favorite song of the whole year. I love this song so much. My daughter doesn't, so she speaks Serbian and English, and neither. That's what happens when your kids are bilingual. But she tries to sing this song in French. It's confusing her language. Mach is making my own baby opaque. Beefaroni in the mid. I don't know why he's talking about beefaroni. I know I used to eat a lot of Chef Boyardee when I was growing up. A lot of Chef Boyardee ravioli was like one of my main dishes. Open that puppy up, dump it out into the bowl. Don't even heat it up. Just eat that shit raw. Xerox Clot, or Xerox Twat, as it's called on the album, is a conversation between Mach-Hommy and Haitian Jack. Please look up Haitian Jack. Very colorful figure in world history. Friend turned enemy of Tupac Shakur. Inspiration of Tupac Shakur. He's been blamed for all sorts of things, which he did or did not do. He was blamed for Tupac shooting. He is blamed for all sorts of things. He's in exile. He's been deported. His story is a very interesting story of, growing up in America as a Haitian, as a kid, and being made fun of by the other kids, right? Because that's the thing. We're talking about immigration here. We're not just talking about black and white. And Haitian black kids in America were teased by non-Haitian black kids in America and made to feel ostracized and outsider, right? There's a whole nother layer. There's a whole nother level that's going on here. Please remember that hip-hop is... without the Caribbean, there is no hip-hop. DJ Kool Herc, Grandmaster Flash, okay? There is no hip-hop without the Caribbean. But still, that... and they have a whole discussion all about capitalism and cancer at the roots and the difficulty of trying to figure out what's happening in Haiti and sort of blaming shadowy forces for controlling everything in Haiti that's happening now. Then we get to the song Gorgonzolan. So Gorgonzola is an Italian cheese, and a gorgon is it's like Medusa. It's like a mythical figure. Bésame mucho. His beautiful singing here. It's sort of tied in again with the other song, kind of like a traditional song that we know. His voice is his greatest instrument. This is 1 minute. It's like 1.5 minute long, but I could talk about it for 45 minutes. Fabuloso on the Stovetop and Foxy Brown, Tommy Mottola. I want my Gorgonzola. You keep the blue cheese. I don't even know. His voice breaks. You doing business with the crew chief? Who, me? He calls himself the richest ever Haitian. Again, that may be the case. He may be like, yeah. Then a little Congo at the end. The Serpent and the Rainbow. Okay. Serpent and the Rainbow is a movie. Okay? It's a very questionable movie starring me, starring Bill Pullman, the president from Independence Day. Check my comment section. I am called the president from Independence Day all the time. Listen, what? Do all white people who look like me look the same? It's fine. I do look like Bill Pullman. But we will not go quietly into the night. But it's a movie about Haiti. It's a movie about a white guy who's trying to get zombie powder. It's roughly based on a true-ish story about a guy who I would say is shadiness is on par with Haitian Jack, but just in a went to Harvard way as opposed to was deported for being a gangster way. But it's an interesting movie. It's not terrible, but it's very problematic because it's a white guy and a white director and a white story all about Haiti. But it's made by Wes Craven. And one of Mach-Hommy's main producers is Nicholas Craven. Now, they're not related, but shouldn't this be together? Shouldn't Wes Craven produce the song named after the Wes Craven movie by Nicholas Craven? I do text back and forth with Nicholas Craven because I do a lot of work on Montreal hip-hop. And he was like, ha, 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 I hadn't even thought of that. So probably Mach didn't think of it either. He probably just knew that that's a thing about Haiti that people know. It starts off like the serpent represents the earth and the rainbow represents the heaven, and all of existence is in between them. That's a sort of general belief in the voodoo faith, right? That's like a belief. Lots of snakes. You see behind me. I believe that's supposed to be a water loa, who's also represented by a snake. And then this beat is so good. It settles into this like harmonica and guitar. And I'm not going to sample snitch, except to say that my wife was like, I know this song. And it's from a movie. Humphrey Bogart and Ava Gardner. It's pretty cool. We're going to end up watching this movie. I don't think that's like tied into anything. I don't think it's like an intentional thing. But it's just this beautiful underwater drums and these cool sounds. And it's just crispity, crunchity, peanut buttery, subtly. That's a Butterfingers commercial. Stash house fuckery. All the ways that he makes these things. It's just so beautiful. It's just such a well-made rap song. Just, do you get better than this beat? Do you get better? If I just want to simplify it to just studying the weave of how these things go together, does it get better? Copy Cold, Produced, I think, by Kelchris, and featuring Black Thought. Sometimes the biggest name guest appearance is on the song that I like the least. I happen to not like this song. I mean, I like this song, but to me it's less interesting than the rest. The piano's cool. It's kind of in another dimension, like the way the beat changes, but the chorus is like, it's okay, it's okay. And Black Thought's great. You know, he's great, but I just sort of don't really need it. What's interesting is there's a little thing here saying Sky News is giving you a report about we had to be let into the war zone and there's 10 policemen killed last week. I found the clip. Now I'm going to sample snitch. It's from Sky News, which is actually run by Rupert Murdoch, the same guy who owns Fox News, so it's kind of a dubious source here. But I'll include a link to that as well, where you can see it's like from a month ago, or it's from very recently. I don't know when exactly from, maybe a year ago, but it's all about the situation in Port-au-Prince right now, and it's all about these gang leaders, in particular a guy named Barbecue, who's sort of like the face of all this unrest. Then we get to the title track, hashtag RichAXX Haitian. This came out like a month ago, and I listened to it so many times when I was moving my son out of college, away from the International Monetary Fund. Oh my God, it's so funny because when this came out, it's produced by Kate Taronda. I thought that it was going to mean, you know, the whole album is going to be like a dance album. So I'm like, I was getting ready for it. I was getting ready for a non-standard mock album. I was getting ready for an all Kate Taronda kind of like Québécois dance party song. It's just this song, but let's throw this in there with Not Like Us. Okay, and Littlefoot Bigfoot is like one of our summer jams, because this could be a summer jam. It's that beautiful weave of his voice, and O3 Greedo comes on, a very modern sounding rapper singing, and, you know, we still want more. And, you know, I didn't know that I wanted a Mach-Hommy song like this, but now it exists, and I'm happy that it's here. Lon, back to the more normal soundscape, again produced by Fort. The flute and a trilling bass in the right, and the bass comes in, it's funky and cool, and it's a very political song. But again, his political stuff is often very subtle. I believe Lon is in reference to Babylon, which is a term that's used in the Rastafari religion to refer to the modern corrupted world, taking from the Bible. Often Babylon is represented as being sort of white culture being imposed onto non-white culture. So when he sings Babylon, leave we alone, it's not, I think it's more about a sort of anti-spiritual, materialistic, exploitative culture. But it's a Jamaican term. And that's what's fun about studying Caribbean culture, that sort of mixing and creolization, that there is a lot of influence and confluence between them, which I think gets strengthened when they move to America, because from what I know, Haitians have a difficult reputation in the Caribbean as being sort of, I don't know, arrogant. But, you know, if you move to America and you're Haitian and you're next to a Jamaican, you probably have more in common than you have in difference. It's easy to juice a lot of grapes, but it's harder just to eat one. I believe that's a statement of resistance. If the meaning is free lunch, ignorance can compromise a mean bunch. Ain't no significance in being martyrs if you flooding out arenas. The bass gets so nutty on here. This is, I keep talking about it. I talked about it with Drake and Kendrick. I talked about it with Conway the Machine. We underestimate the value of beat selection. This masked man, has at his fingertips, so many great producers, and he's not only choosing great beats, but he's doing great things with them. I'm nearly positive he was the one. He had to be the one who thought about just turning up the bass so loud in the second half of this song. I came as willingly as slaves crossing the Atlantic. These crackers billing me for their parking fees, pathetic. That's true, you know? Like, reparations is a funny thing. Because there's also just the idea that, like, this whole world view that we imposed on all these people, and then we're still, like, by we, I mean sort of like dominant culture. I don't necessarily always mean just, you know, white Americans or whatever, but like any dominant culture that subjugates people and then continually punishes them for not playing the game that they never signed up to play in the first place. The injustice of that is exemplified by the idea of a parking fee, right? Like, should... Okay, this is a goofy-ass question. But should anybody who is not the result of voluntary immigration pay for parking in the United States of America? It's an interesting question, right? I mean, think, if a member of the Navajo, drives to Dallas and parks their car, they're going to get a parking ticket. They're going to get a parking ticket. Someone from the Seneca park over there in Rochester in front of the Xerox building, they're going to get a parking ticket. They're going to charge them money. Okay, these are all. It's a funny, goofy way of talking about the very serious question of post-colonial anxiety. He also mentions discogs, props. Au bon parfum, more discussion, a very short loop. I believe I heard the word oreilles, which is from the French word oreille, which means ears, which is how they refer to white people in Martinique. Because do you ever notice how white people's ears always are red? Because the sun would be coming through. So I don't know. But then the question, look at what's going on in Haiti right now. We get to Same 24, sort of in that rich AXX Haitian style, more of kind of a poppy song, but it's ethereal, this high choir, angelic harp sounds. Rhymes to homie and homie. I follow someone on Instagram who wrote a book called The Homie and the Homie. Interesting book. Chorus, the same 24 hours in a day, same 60 minutes. So I sort of get that. It's like that Rent, that terrible song from Rent. Sorry, that's an oxymoron. That normal song from Rent, which is therefore terrible. I've been hating Rent since the second it came out, by the way. I'm not a new school. I'm a hipster Rent hater. I hated that for the first time. My friend Annika made me listen to it. She sat me down and said, Skye is the greatest thing I've ever heard in my entire life. I said, I hate this so much. Maybe it's good, though. I don't know. I doubt she's watching. No, actually, it was my friend Mary. It was my friend Mary who played it for me. Point is, then he says, too busy mixing the Guinness with the sour. I don't know what that means. Sauerkraut? Sieg Sauer Guns? Chico, Big Chico's on here. Cool, kind of quiet guy. He's nice. Guggenheim Jeune, produced by Sadhu Gold again. It's just a mad guitar. It's all flanged and screwed up. It's not really set. The drums aren't really there. The drums actually end up becoming a heartbeat. And these opening lyrics, is there anybody better at creating opening? Because the thing is, he's so, that a Mach-Hommy verse is a stream that is ending in a waterfall. At some point you're just going to lose track of what the hell he's saying. So the first lines, you're so excited when you can understand them. So it's your man is too confident. Okay. Hommy smiling at your maker in the mirror. And then it just goes off. Just then he talks about there's more than one way to skin a cat. That's this chorus that he sings. And I looked up the history of it. There's nothing particularly interesting. It was from before Mark Twain, but it's popularized by Mark Twain in Connecticut Yankee in King Arthur's court. She was wise, subtle, and knew more than one way to skin a cat. But its original context was actually about different ways to make money. That's actually what it's about. The original meaning of it, there's more than one way to make money. So maybe that's what he's talking about. I got my English in a jar. I don't know what that means, but I find it interesting. You see why I don't like whitening my claw. This is that poetics I'm talking about. This is that thing where poets who resist easy reading are in a sense fighting against the belief of absolute ideals of beauty and reason. They're supposed to dominate art. So English in a jar, and I don't want to whiten my claw. It feels like it makes sense as a statement against sort of linguistic hegemony or against racial oppression, but I don't have it all there for you. I cannot make it clear. The way the snare echoes on here. And then the track ends with holy underscore. That's not on the vinyl. Damn it. This is another sick conductor beat. Clapping sounds, kind of dusty, high hiss and a ring, and this great little funk groove with the guitar and bass. Okay, here his opening line is what the hell are you talking about? The less crowbar, the gate all the way? Dude, are you missing some words? The kind of case where open cases keep the moms awake. My beautiful dark twisted fantasy was a fetus on the tray. more this theme of like dead children. I don't quite get it. I don't quite understand it. But I want that guy, the guy Potter, the guy who wrote the paper that I quoted in the beginning. He was like, "Oh, I think this should be an interesting paper. Are you planning on writing it?" And now I'm like, "Damn, do I have to write a paper about opacity and Mach-Hommy? That might be good. I don't have time. I got to keep making videos." So this is going to be my public-facing scholarship. The chorus is very strong. Praise the Lord, then pass the ammo. The difficulty of spirituality and materialism and the violence of life all kind of together here. Nice little flute, catchy chorus. He makes a reference to the America's Cup, which is, this is what I'm talking like who thinks about America's Cup? Who? I barely know what the America's Cup is, and like I've been to Newport, Rhode Island before, okay? But like, how in the world? Like, why are you thinking about America's Cup? Like, just saying America's Cup makes you think of competitive boat racing, and then you're thinking about America's Cup, and you're thinking about Americas, like Central America, and you're thinking about the Caribbean, and you're thinking about boats, and you're thinking about slavery, and you're thinking about all these things all together. How does he think about? How does he think to say the words America's Cup? How does Mach-Hommy sit at home and write stuff out, and then say, I need to mention America's Cup. I need to unleash this semiotic downpour. Toby's licking. Toby, stop licking. Just absolutely insane. How is he pulling out these ideas? It's not thematically linked, as far as I can tell, to the rest of it. More of this theme of people selling out just to make money. He actually does make direct reference to Zotanica.com, his website, where you buy his vinyl, He's smart. He knows how to make money in probably the best possible way, where he makes something so good and then makes it so exclusive that people who appreciate it and can afford to appreciate it are able to buy it and subsidize him. I am like so I'm going to talk about, these are my Patreons. I'm not at the end of the video, by the way. I'm going to talk more about the stuff behind me, but these are my Patreons. I'll just shout them out now. I got too many now, so I'm running way out of space. This is like one method of patronage, which is awesome, and I super duper appreciate it. And if you're my Patreon and you don't see my name there, just please know I'm redoing these soon. Listen, it's been a good month for old Professor Skye. You actually become, he calls them investors, but what you really are is you're an investor. You're like heavily supporting his art in a very deep and meaningful way. Like, I want this thing to exist so bad, and hundreds of other people want this to exist so bad that we are willing to pay for it. Just like Patreons. A couple of my Patreons want to shout outs: Ken Karaoke, Tatsu123, Jack Dyson, Zach, Lear, Sam Keegle, Fickle, and Toby Repellent. I need Toby Repellent because the dude is still licking. Look at him over there. Look at him. Look at him doing all this licking. You still licking? Yeah, you see, he's still licking. So I want to just take you through these things here. All right? So there's his album cover. Okay? I've shown this before on the channel, but this is my most prized piece of art. My father went to Haiti in 1958, and when he was on the dock, he bought this wooden sculpture of Toussaint Louverture, the great leader of the revolution, and it's an amazing piece of art, and I have it with the face covered like Mach-Hommy out of respect. On the back here, we have him at the Citadel, which was made by Christophe, who's one of the great leaders of Haiti, very complicated figure. I've mentioned this in the past, but if you ever have a chance, you should read Aimé Césaire, another Caribbean poet and playwright, The Tragedy of King Christophe, because the Citadel is this beautiful place that was built to ward off the French and to make sure they would never fall into slavery again, but it just never really quite worked. The history just didn't quite work. And then this is brand new. My colleague gave this to me. We're moving offices, and this was a gift to her from one of her Haitian students. And it's like, this is, it's by a guy named Dieu Seul Paul from 1983. And I believe it's supposed to be Dambala, the water Loa, sort of intermediary between people and gods. I believe that's who it's supposed to be, but I don't know. If you know more about what that Veve might be, you can tell me. Maybe it's someone else. All that I know is that I'm happy to have it. So, there you go. It's 8:23 a.m. The Citadel was built in 1820, by the way. It was finished in 1820. So, more than 200 years of the Citadel. So I'm going to go wake up my baby, make sure she's okay, get her some yogurt, and frankly, I'm going to go right back to listening to Rich Assassination. I know, I want to listen to that Rhapsody album too. But, oh yeah, look, it's camouflage on the inside. Camouflage is another theme here. Camouflage is a way to promote opacity. It all goes together. All right. Did you like this theory? Do you like this idea of opacity? Did you just watch me talk for an hour and 14 minutes about an artist, telling you that I shouldn't be talking to you about an artist? You did. Welcome to grad school. There's the camera.